They taught you to chase validation, to earn love, to prove your value, but no one ever told you the truth. You were never meant to beg for worth you already had. You weren't born doubting yourself, that inner critic. It wasn't part of you when you came into this world, that voice that says you're not enough, not good looking enough, not smart enough, not successful enough. It was learned. Somewhere along the way, through experiences, comments, comparisons, disappointments, and pressure, you started believing you were less than. You started thinking your worth had something to do with how well you performed, how many people liked you, or how many things you got right. But I want you to sit with this: self-worth isn't something someone gives you, it's something you build. That might be uncomfortable to hear, because it also means that if someone can't give you self-worth, they also can't take it away. That's power, but it's a kind of power many of us don't know how to use, because we've been taught the opposite. We're conditioned to chase validation from people, from accomplishments, from numbers, and we're taught that being worthy means being perfect. But perfection is a lie, it's a moving target, and every time you get close, someone shifts the finish line. You see, when you don't believe in your own worth, you let the world write your story, you hand over the pen to strangers. One rejection becomes your identity, one bad relationship becomes your truth, one failure becomes your label, and suddenly, you're not living for you anymore, you're living to be enough for them. But here's what I want you to understand: no matter who failed to see your value, no matter what mistakes you've made, no matter how many times you've fallen, your worth never left. It just got buried under all the noise. Building self-worth starts by getting quiet enough to hear your own voice again. Not the voice of fear, not the voice of shame, not the voice of expectations, but the voice that says, I matter. I am enough, even as I grow, even while I heal. It's about showing up for yourself on the days when no one's clapping. When nothing looks shiny, when your confidence is low, your to-do list is untouched, and your energy is drained, but you still choose to treat yourself with respect. Some people think self-worth is arrogant. It's not. Arrogance is loud because it's scared. Real self-worth is calm. It doesn't beg to be seen. It doesn't need to prove anything. It knows that failure is part of growth, not a measure of value. It knows that rest doesn't mean laziness, and it knows that comparison is a thief that never delivers what it promises. There are people walking around right now with all the success, all the achievements, all the recognition, and still feeling empty. Why? Because self-worth isn't a result of external gain, it's a result of internal alignment. And if your self-worth is tied to outcomes, it'll rise and fall like the stock market. But when it's rooted in your own unshakable truth, you stop riding that roller coaster. You learn how to stand firm, even when everything around you feels uncertain. And I want to be real with you. Building self-worth is uncomfortable because it means you stop people pleasing. It means you say no when you used to say yes just to keep the peace. It means walking away from people who don't value you, even if they've been part of your life for years. It means being misunderstood sometimes. It means giving yourself the love you waited years to get from someone else. And that's hard, but that's growth. You deserve to feel worthy without proving, without performing, without earning it. Your worth is not based on your productivity. It's not measured by likes, comments, income, weight, or relationship status. It just is, and once you believe that, everything shifts. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop tolerating things that drain you. You stop needing to be chosen because you finally chose yourself. So don't wait for someone to validate your value. Don't wait for a perfect day, a perfect job, or a perfect relationship to finally believe you're enough. Start building it today. With every small promise you keep to yourself, with every boundary you set, with every time you choose growth over approval. Because your worth isn't waiting at the finish line, it's with you every step of the way. A lot of people confuse confidence with self-worth. They think if someone walks into a room with their head held high, speaks well, dresses sharp, commands attention, that person must have high self-worth. But let me tell you something that's going to shift the way you look at yourself and others. Confidence is about performance, but self-worth is about presence. You can be confident in public and still feel worthless in private. You can nail the presentation, get the applause, make people laugh, and still go home feeling like you're not good enough. That's the truth people don't talk about enough. Confidence is something you do. It's a skill. You can learn to speak with impact, to stand tall, to master your craft. And there's nothing wrong with that. Confidence is important. but it's not the same as self-worth. Self-worth is what's left when the performance ends. When the lights are off, when you're alone with your thoughts, when you mess up, fall short, lose momentum. Confidence might take a hit in those moments, but self-worth says, I'm still okay, I'm still valuable. See, we've been taught to measure ourselves by how well we're doing. Did you get the job? Did they like your post? Are you making progress? Are you winning? Are you admired? And if the answer's yes, we feel good, but when the answer's no, suddenly we feel like we're falling behind in life. But that's because we're using the wrong measuring stick. Confidence is external. It's about results. Self-worth is internal. It's about your relationship with yourself, especially when those results don't show up. There are people out there who can't speak in front of a crowd, who struggle with anxiety, who feel socially awkward, but their self-worth is unshakable. They might not look confident, but they know they're enough. And then there are people who can light up a room, charm anyone, dominate a conversation, but inside, they're terrified of not being loved if they stop performing. I know this sounds real because we've all either been one of those people or tried to be both. But here's where things get honest. Confidence without self-worth is exhausting because you're constantly managing an image instead of being at peace with who you are. You don't need to be the loudest person in the room to have worth. You don't need to always have the right answer or win the argument. Self-worth allows you to be silent and still feel secure. It lets you walk away from things that don't serve you, not because you don't care, but because you care about yourself too much to stay where you're not respected. And here's the tricky part. You can fake confidence. You can build it through repetition and polish it until it looks effortless. But you can't fake self-worth. You either believe you're enough or you don't. And if you don't, you'll feel it quietly in how you settle for less, how you tolerate disrespect, how you overextend, how you second-guess yourself, how you shrink when you should stand. So what do you do with that? You start by separating your achievements from your identity. What you do is not who you are. Whether you win or lose today, you're still worthy of love, respect, and rest. That truth doesn't change just because your confidence is shaken. And it doesn't grow stronger just because people cheer for you. Self-worth isn't louder applause, it's deeper acceptance. When you get to the place where your worth isn't tied to performance, you move differently. You stop feeling like you have something to prove. You stop chasing every opportunity like it's the last one you'll ever get. You stop forcing people to see your value, because you already see it yourself. Confidence says, I can do this. Self-worth says, even if I can't, I'm still enough. And you'll still have moments where you question it. That's normal. The goal isn't to feel unshakable every day. It's to recognize the difference between your feelings and your foundation. Confidence can dip, but your worth doesn't have to follow. It's not built on how high you can climb. It's built on how deeply you know yourself. So on the days when your energy is low, when you mess up, when things fall through, don't mistake that for being less than. It's just a low moment, not a low value. Confidence might open the door, but self-worth is what keeps you standing when it closes. We don't talk enough about how addictive validation really is, how deeply we crave it, how easily it controls us. I'm not just talking about social media likes or compliments. I'm talking about the way we start shaping our lives around getting approval from other people. It's subtle at first. You do something well and someone says, "Good job," and it feels good. Naturally, you want more of that. So you start repeating the behavior. You start bending yourself just a little to get more applause, more recognition, more praise. Before you know it, you're not living for yourself anymore. You're performing. And here's where it gets dangerous, when you let that validation determine your value. When you start believing that how others see you is the same thing as how you should see yourself. But that's not truth, that's noise, because validation feels good for a moment, but it's a hit, like sugar or caffeine. It gives you a high, but it never lasts, and the more you depend on it, the more anxious you get when it's not there. Think about it. How many times have you questioned your worth just because someone didn't text back, or didn't compliment your work, or didn't notice your effort? How many times have you posted something and kept checking your phone, hoping it gets the response you need to feel better about yourself? That's the trap. You start giving other people the power to decide whether or not you're enough, and once they have that power, you're never at peace, because their opinions will always shift. That's why relying on validation is so exhausting. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in it. No matter how much praise you pour in, it leaks out the second someone criticizes you, so you work harder. You try to be funnier, more attractive, more productive, more likable, and maybe it works for a while, people respond. You feel seen, but deep down, you know you're not being fully you, you're being a version of you that's been curated for approval. And I get it, we're wired for connection, we all want to be loved, we all want to be appreciated. But there's a difference between receiving love and depending on it. There's a difference between enjoying encouragement and needing it to feel whole. Because when your self-worth is tied to how people treat you, you're never truly free, you're performing even in your quiet moments. You're wondering if you're enough even when no one's watching, but what if you didn't need the claps? What if you didn't need someone to tell you a good job for you to feel proud of your own effort? What if you could look in the mirror and not need someone else's voice to confirm your value? That's when real power shows up. When you know how to clap for yourself, when you do something kind or brave or hard, and no one sees it, and you still feel whole. That's the kind of self-worth that doesn't crack under silence. It doesn't crumble when someone ignores you, it stands on its own. Let me ask you this, if you stop performing for others, if you stop chasing their applause, what would you start doing differently? What would you wear? How would you speak? Who would you stop trying to impress? Because the version of you that's addicted to validation is probably tired. It's exhausting to keep up with expectations that were never yours to begin with. You don't need a standing ovation to matter. You don't need to be everyone's favorite to be valuable. Sometimes, the most self-loving thing you can do is sit with the discomfort of not being validated and still refuse to shrink. Still refuse to betray yourself. Still walk with your head held high, knowing you don't need permission to take up space. It's okay to want encouragement. It's okay to enjoy recognition. But don't confuse those things with proof of your worth. That proof already exists in your breath, in your heart, in the way you keep showing up even when no one's watching. So if the validation goes away, don't panic, don't beg for it, don't twist yourself to earn it back. Just breathe, stay rooted, keep moving, because your peace is too expensive to trade for someone else's approval. People think self-worth is something you find, like a missing piece of a puzzle. They wait for it to show up in a relationship, or a job, or a compliment that finally makes everything click. But self-worth isn't something you stumble upon one day and suddenly everything changes. It's something you build, piece by piece, day by day. It's not a single breakthrough, it's a daily practice, and that's the part that throws most people off. They want a one-time fix. A motivational high, something that makes them feel unstoppable forever. But that's not how this works. Self-worth isn't a moment of inspiration. It's the decision you make every day to believe you're enough, especially on the days it's hardest to believe. You don't build self-worth through the big wins, you build it in the small, quiet choices, the mornings when you get up and show up, even when you're tired. The times you say no to things that drain you, the moments you speak up for yourself, even when your voice shakes. That's where the work happens, that's where the roots grow. You have to practice self-worth the same way you practice anything else you want to get better at. Just like going to the gym or learning a new skill, it's consistency over hype. You might not feel amazing every time. You might not see instant results, but that doesn't mean it's not working. Every time you honor yourself with your time, your energy, your words, you're reinforcing the message. I matter, and yes, some days will feel like a setback. You'll doubt yourself, you'll feel small, maybe you'll give too much to the wrong people. Maybe you'll fall back into old patterns. That doesn't mean you've lost your worth, it just means you're human. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. It's catching yourself in the moment and choosing differently the next time. The mistake people make is thinking that self-worth is about always feeling good. It's not. It's about treating yourself with respect even when you don't. It's about showing up for yourself even when your confidence is low, your motivation is gone, and your emotions are heavy. It's about not abandoning yourself when you're struggling. You want to know what real self-worth looks like. It looks like boundaries. It looks like rest. It looks like turning your phone off when your soul needs silence. It looks like walking away from chaos because peace is more important than proving your point. It looks like choosing discomfort now so you don't have to live with regret later, and you don't need to make massive changes overnight. You build this slowly. You start small. Maybe it's 5 minutes of quiet in the morning. Maybe it's saying no without explaining yourself. Maybe it's eating a meal without guilt. Maybe it's forgiving yourself for something you've held onto for way too long. It doesn't have to be flashy, it just has to be honest. The more you show up for yourself, the more you start to believe that you deserve it. You don't need anyone else to agree, you don't need applause, you just need to follow through on the promises you make to you. That's what builds trust, and self-worth is built on trust, not the trust other people have in you, but the trust you have in yourself. Are you someone who keeps showing up for you, or someone who constantly puts yourself last? That's the real question. Because if you keep abandoning yourself, it doesn't matter how much success you gain or how many people love you, it won't feel real. But when you show up over and over again, even in the messy moments, you start to feel something shift. You stop chasing, you stop begging, you start standing. Some days it'll feel easy, some days it won't. But that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong, it just means you're doing it honestly, and that's how real self-worth is built, not through perfection, not through performance, but through presence. Through the daily decision to be kind to yourself, to protect your peace, and to remember that you're not working toward being enough, you're working from the truth that you already are. It's easy to believe that your past defines you. When you've been hurt, overlooked, criticized, or abandoned, those experiences don't just pass through, they stick. They shape the way you see yourself. They whisper things like, you're not lovable, or you're not good enough, or you always mess things up. And if you hear those messages long enough, you stop questioning them, you start living like they're true. But here's the truth that's often hard to accept. Your past doesn't define your worth, your beliefs do. You might not have had a choice in what happened to you. You didn't choose to be rejected, to be broken, to carry that kind of pain. But you do have a choice now to believe something different, because holding on to an identity shaped by pain keeps you small. It convinces you that growth isn't for you, that joy isn't for you, that healthy love or success or peace somehow doesn't belong to you. That's not true, it was never true, it's just a belief you picked up when you were too hurt, too young, or too tired to know better. And here's the thing about beliefs, you can unlearn them. Just because you've thought something for years doesn't mean it's fact. Just because someone treated you like you weren't worthy doesn't mean you aren't. Just because you failed in the past doesn't mean you're destined to fail again. But if you keep carrying those beliefs around like they're carved in stone, they'll keep shaping your life, your relationships, your decisions, your self-talk. You've probably heard the phrase, hurt people, but the part no one talks about is that hurt people also hurt themselves. Not always on purpose, but in the way we talk ourselves out of opportunities, in the way we self-sabotage when things start going well, in the way we let toxic people stay too long because deep down, we don't believe we deserve better. That's not weakness, that's unhealed belief. That's a story that hasn't been challenged yet, so let's challenge it. Let's talk about the story you've been telling yourself, the one that starts with I always, or I never, or no one ever. Those sentences have power, they create patterns, but they're not the full picture. They're just the loudest parts of a past that tried to break you. You have the right to write a new story. One where you are not a victim of your past, but a student of it. One where the things you've been through don't define your identity, they refine your strength. You see, the more you believe in your pain, the more it becomes your lens. You start expecting to be hurt. You expect people to leave, you expect failure, and when those things happen, it confirms the belief. But what if that belief was never yours to carry? What if someone else gave it to you, a parent, a bully, an ex-society, and you just never stopped to return it? It's time to return it, not by forgetting the past, but by choosing not to live in it. Not by pretending the pain didn't happen, but by refusing to let it sit in the driver's seat. Your past shaped your wounds, but it doesn't get to shape your worth. You get to decide what you believe about yourself now. You get to say, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become from it. And that choice isn't just a one-time thing, it's a practice. It's waking up each day and speaking something new over your life. It's being kind to yourself even when the old voices get loud. It's choosing to believe that healing is not only possible, it's already happening every time you say no to the belief that kept you stuck. You are not broken, you are not behind, you are not unworthy, you are someone who's growing, someone who's learning how to be gentle with themselves after years of being hard on themselves. Someone who is learning how to build a life based on truth, not trauma, and yes, that takes time. That takes patience, but most of all, it takes belief not in a perfect version of you, but in the real version. The one who's trying, the one who hasn't given up, the one who's choosing to unlearn the lie that worth has to be earned or proven. Because the moment you start rewriting the story you believe about yourself, that's the moment everything starts to change. Something powerful happens when you finally know your worth, not just intellectually, because a lot of people say they know, but deep down in your bones. When it's no longer a quote you post or a line you repeat when things go wrong, but a truth you carry in every decision, every boundary, every conversation. That's when everything starts to change. You stop chasing. That's the first thing. You stop chasing people, approval, titles, attention. Because when you know your worth, you no longer feel the need to prove it. You stop trying to earn a seat at every table. You stop begging to be seen because you already see yourself. There's a quiet confidence that settles in, and it's not loud or flashy, it's just steady. Unbothered, grounded, you start choosing instead of waiting to be chosen. That shift is everything. Instead of constantly wondering if they like you, if they'll accept you, if they'll call you back or keep you around, you ask yourself, do I actually want this? Does this align with who I am? You begin living from your standards, not your insecurities, and those standards. They get higher, not because you think you're better than anyone else, but because you finally realize what you deserve. And what you deserve isn't rooted in pride, it's rooted in peace. When you know your worth, disrespect starts to feel louder. You notice things you used to tolerate, the passive-aggressive comments, the lack of effort, the one-sided friendships, the emotional crumbs. You don't pretend not to see them anymore, you don't make excuses for them, you don't twist yourself into knots to make them okay. You recognize it, and then you make a choice, because knowing your worth doesn't always mean walking away with anger. Sometimes it's walking away quietly, without drama, just peace. Because your energy is no longer for sale, you also start showing up differently for yourself. You don't just protect your peace, you prioritize it. You don't just say you're healing, you actually do the work. You sit with the discomfort, you get honest with your patterns. You own your triggers, you start asking why instead of repeating the same cycles, and you give yourself grace, not because you're avoiding accountability, but because you're learning how to love yourself in the process. There's something magnetic about someone who knows their worth. They move through life with clarity, they don't over-explain, over-apologize, or overextend. They're kind but not a doormat, they're humble but not self-deprecating, they give, but not at the cost of their well-being. You feel it in the way they carry themselves. It's not ego, it's alignment. They're not trying to impress you. They're just being real, and that's the energy people are drawn to. Not perfection, not performance, but presence. And let's be honest, not everyone's going to be comfortable with this version of you. When you start showing up with a clear sense of who you are, it disrupts people who benefited from your self-doubt. They'll say you've changed, they'll say you're cold now, distant, arrogant even. But what they're really saying is that they miss the version of you who settled. The version of you who kept the peace at the cost of your own. That version isn't coming back. Because once you know your worth, pretending you don't is far more painful than being alone, misunderstood, or disliked. You start to realize that not everyone is meant to go with you, and that's okay. When your worth becomes non-negotiable, your circle might shrink, but the peace, the clarity, the love you give and receive, it expands. You're no longer accepting love that comes with conditions. You're no longer building your identity on shaky ground. You're no longer wasting time proving your value in places that couldn't see it. It's not that life becomes perfect. Challenges don't disappear, insecurities don't vanish overnight, but now when things fall apart, you don't fall apart with them. You know who you are, you know what you bring to the table, you trust yourself, you advocate for yourself. And when doubt creeps in, as it always will, you don't spiral, you pause, you breathe, you remind yourself, even now, I'm still worthy. That's the freedom that comes with knowing your worth. You don't need constant reassurance, you don't need permission to take up space. You don't need to explain your value, you live it, you walk in it, and that kind of self-worth, that's what changes everything.